Welcome to another episode of the Forever and Ever podcast. I'm your host, Omar Hargrove, and today we're going to talk about money, kids, and time as we learn how to handle real life pressure together. So, I think that these aren't just practical areas, these are incredibly emotional areas, and it's stuff that every couple has to eventually navigate. And why is it something like that? It's because they touch on our values, our priorities, our dreams. They touch on almost every stress point. And if you've ever felt tension in your relationship around money decisions, differences in parenting styles, or even not having enough time for each other, then you're not alone. Today we're going to unpack how to walk through these topics with clarity, with communication, and unity. Not perfectly, but as we go together. So let's talk about money first. We're going to start with that biggest pressure point in marriage, and it's money. Money is rarely just about dollars and cents. It's about control, it's about safety, priorities, and even identity. And the hard truth is that most of us were never really taught how to talk about money in a healthy way. I mean, shoot, weren't even taught how to budget in a healthy way, let alone with one another, another person who may think completely differently about money than we do. And some of us are savers, others are spenders, somewhat to budget down to the penny, while others kind of spend according to how they feel. And they don't like the idea of feeling restricted by this tight financial planning. And if you're not talking about these kinds of differences early on, or even just often, money can create resentments and even a breakdown of trust. And this is what we need to understand, is that you don't have to agree on everything, but you should still have honesty as you talk to one another about these things. For me and Lauren early on, this idea, we noticed that we have different rhythms when it came to our finances. And so we created these different ideas and structures, and we've had to adjust them periodically over time. There's times where we agreed on spending threshold. If a purchase was above a certain dollar amount, then it's that we both agreed we needed to talk about it. There's times where if it was just over $50, we need to talk about it. There's other times where if it was over a couple $100, we need to talk about it. It just depends on where you're at and what y'all both feel like is reasonable or necessary. And there's it's this idea also where we gave each other freedom within the budget, not control over each other. So when it came down to budgeting, even how much either one of us would spend, or even just we would budget times where we would budget fund money, and we would allocate this reasonable amount that felt good to both of us, and we're communicating about it. It's especially if you're the one that manages the money, and I have been the person for this time and time again. I'm not making it like I'm an angel, okay? But especially if you're the one who mainly handles the finances, it can be easy for you to say, no, we can't get that, we can't do this, we can't do that. But then when you want something, you can kind of mathematically move things around. You're like, well, if I did this, did that, then I could get what I want. And it's not that we're necessarily trying to make these intentional stiflings of others or other things, and while not regarding our own, but it's like a small sliver of that. So where when we want something, it feels easier to get something compared to maybe our spouse when they want something. And so we need to be honest about those times and be reasonable. And when we are able to have these kinds of honest conversations, it helps being able to prepare or protect against moments like that we normally fight over. Another thing is deciding how we would save, how much we would save, even how much we would give, and how much we would donate. And we talked about how we manage unexpected expenses even before they happen. And so it's we had this idea of where certain money would go to. And again, you don't have to be rich to have peace about money, but you do need unity. And unity comes through communication and not assumption. So a big part of this is just communicating about money and managing these kinds of expectations in a practical and reasonable way as you talk to one another. Now let's talk about parenting. And now parenting takes a team. And parenting is one of the most beautiful and most exhausting things that you'll ever do as a couple. But it surprises a lot of couples is that what surprises a lot of couples is that you and your spouse might have widely different ideas about how to raise your children. And you won't fully realize it until you're actually in the moment. And you might think like, oh, well, we're going to, when we have kids, we've already talked about it. They're going to, we both agree on all these different details. I will say that what works out on paper does not always work out in the actual moments in real life. And maybe one of you might be more structured while the other is more laid back. Maybe one of you believes in timeouts while the other one grew up with no discipline at all. Maybe you disagree on screen time limits. Maybe you disagree on bedtime routines or how to handle meltdowns. See, these are moments where, again, y'all might have had a conversation about it before parenting, but in actual parenting, you realize that you feel different in the moment. And, seeing your little baby's face and you just like, it breaks your heart. And how could I ever say no to them? And so you do something that y'all talked about before. Again, this is just realizing ourselves and how differently we actually feel about things when we're faced with them and then communicating about it. And it doesn't mean that one of you is right and the other is wrong. It means that your parenting lens was one, you have different parenting lenses that were shaped by possibly different upbringings, different experiences, even different fears and different feelings. But what matters is staying on the same team now, even if you have different perspectives or things that you disagree on. It means that it means that you need to talk through these things before they hit and after they hit. There's times where you thought you talked about something, you realize that there's a misunderstanding or that y'all felt differently. After all, y'all need to talk about it again and just have this reasonable understanding with each other. It means making room for each other's instincts. It means saying, let's figure this out together. Not in front of the kids, maybe, not in the heat of the frustration, but as let's at least have a united front, and then we can work out these details together. Kids especially, they thrive on consistency and stability. And your unity will provide both, even if you all disagree on different things. And again, for me and Lauren, we are probably the best couple ever. We're super perfect, right? But we still have oftentimes big disagreements on how certain exchanges happen or are handled with our kids. And that is normal. That doesn't mean that, oh, y'all weren't meant to be together. It just means you have a different perspective. You have something that you see something differently, and that's okay. You could still be united in something even when you disagree about something. Now, let's go into the third part, which is managing time without losing each other. And this is a big pressure point, time. It's one of the most common things I hear from couples is we're just so busy, we never have time together anymore. And the thing is that time won't automatically prioritize your marriage. You have to fight for it. And whether it's work, kids, ministry, responsibilities, just the chaos of life, everything is pulling at your calendar. Everything is pushing you to where at the end of the day, you just want to sit down and chill. And if you're not intentional, your connection will get lost in the shuffle as it constantly gets put to if we have time. And you'll never really have time. So it's something that we will, these are all things that you have to consider changes as your life changes. These things are not constant. What works for early childhood and toddler phase, you're going to have another conversation in the adolescent phase, as well as like multiple conversations in between. In the teenager phase, you're going to have multiple conversations, and you're going to experience moments to where you felt like you had your kids on lock. You felt like you were the superhero on lock when they were toddlers, but then you feel like you're playing catch up when they're teenagers, while the other one seems to shine. You're going to have this back and forth. And when it comes to this idea of time, this idea of time is understanding that as you grow through life, your conversations are going to become more functional than meaningful. The things that y'all are talking about are often like what needs to happen or things that have happened. And they're not like these necessarily like pretty conversations that you had when y'all were dating. And as schedules become tight, if we're not careful, weeks can easily go by without single intentional moments between the two of you. And so you have to make a simple choice. Start scheduling time together, even if it is just understanding like at the end of the day, we're going to sit without our phones. Or once a week, we're going to have watch a movie together. Like just whatever it is, as you guys are trying to have this scheduled time with one another. And, best case scenario, like me and Lauren, one of the prime phases of our lives was right before we had kids, and we had date night every single Friday. And it was this most consistent rhythm we've ever had. And after having kids, after starting our own businesses, after starting a church, it's a lot harder to have like this kind of same consistency. But understanding that you are working towards that, you're always trying to strive. And there's certain good things that you may have to say no to so that you could say yes to the best things. And that is each other. And you have to get honest about how full we are when we're feeling, and where we need rest, where we need room for margin, room to have an in-between. So again, time isn't just about hours, it's about presence. And even in these little pockets, like when it comes to time, like having breakfast and dinner, something that really works for me and Lorna is that we do not do phones at the table. And when it comes to breakfast and dinner and lunch too, even, we sit at the table together as a family, and there's no phones. We're just there, and it's this idea of presence. We are here together. And you might not have the luxury of these daily date nights or long vacations, but looking for these kinds of moments, these moments that build connection, is pivotal, and you should learn to protect them. So here's the heart of today's episode. Money, parenting, time, these are not just tasks to manage. They're places where your marriage is either strengthened or strained. But when you stay united, you keep communication open and prioritize the relationship over the pressure, you're going to build something that lasts. And so here's a challenge for the week. Have a check-in conversation about money. Ask, how are we financially? Is this something that we're subconsciously stressed about? Is there anything that feels unclear or heavy right now? Number 2, talk about one parenting challenge that you've faced recently and how you can better support one another. Ask each other, is there anything within our parenting styles that I've been doing unknowingly that has made you feel upset or overlooked? You might be surprised at what kind of conversations come out. And again, this is a time for y'all to unite and better understand each other, not to get defensive and create a fight. And number 3, look at your calendar together and schedule some time for connection. Not just survival in the midst of all this and that, but a time of connection for y'all to be even intimate with one another. And as always, if this episode was meaningful for you, I would love for you to try my book, Forever and Ever, and that's where all of these concepts come from. You can order it on my website or order directly off of Amazon. But until next time, have a great life.